Hey y'all, it's your girl Nail, and we are here with another episode of Oya Dimelo's Cinema Club. We have the lovely panel of hosts this evening. It's Michaela, JP, Jason, El Dondino, and Steve. For this week's episode, we are reviewing one of my top favorite films, Empire of the Sun, released in 1987 and directed by Steven Spielberg. It's the story of a young boy growing in Shanghai who is separated from his parents during Japanese invasion and goes through this tremendous transformation. Now, we've been doing some inception work between movies where we pick and choose someone from the previous film that took part in this film. Last week we reviewed Indiana Jones, and I believe that when individuals who trust, work, and hold each other accountable can create and achieve great things, such as making a film like Empire of the Sun and many others that followed after this. Por principio, escogí esta movie for Steven Spielberg and John Williams. Their partnership has produced magnificent pieces that are memorable and create sentimental feelings when we are watching their work. And before I continue and jump in onto what my initial thoughts are, I would love to hear what the panels are first. And let's begin with Michaela.
This was my first time watching this film. It's definitely a Spielberg film. And there's definitely John Williams music in it. I've got to say, it's a really good film. Definitely not one of my favorite Spielberg pieces, but I think I am a better person for saying it. Thank you. Tag, you're it.
That could be anybody. I just think it's funny that you're like I'm a better person for watching the movie. I feel the same way when I see like PSAs about sad dogs. I'm a better person for watching that.
It's just one of those things where it's just like it's not something I'd search out for myself.
Yeah, okay.
Like it's typically not a story like the kind of stories that I'm into.
Yeah. Because it's a war movie.
Yeah. Well, specifically a World War II movie.
Okay.
And
how many?
We're gonna get into that.
There's not that many. This is JP's sidebar right here.
Not even a sidebar. It's JP just trying to rip off of me.
Okay.
I'm gonna call it what it is. You're just trying to be funny.
How dare you? Try.
Yeah.
It's crazy because this is not my first time watching it. This is actually one of my mom's favorite movies. So I've seen this movie several times growing up, so I'm very familiar with it. But this is like the first time I watched it like in well over a decade. So it's funny because I remember seeing so strongly in this film, so I was not too surprised when they came up. But revisiting this movie, I gotta say, like we'll probably talk about it, but I think Christian Bale was just born traumatized because there's a lot of his acting isms that you see him as an adult that's present in this movie. He's a really good actor. He's a great child actor. He does. No wonder Spielberg picked him for the role. And I gotta wonder, whether it was all acting or, were they putting this poor child through actual trauma? Because he played it pretty fucking well. And I guess we'll get more into it when we talk about the music, because I did have a few, that was my only qualm was the soundtrack to this movie. I was surprised. I thought it was a very John Williams sounding soundtrack, but I didn't know it was actually him that did the music. So I was surprised by that. But we'll talk about it later. But yeah, for sure, my thoughts revisiting this movie is Christian Bale totally carries this film, and I don't know, and props to him, especially at that age. I don't know who else could have done that movie, you know? So yeah.
Interesting. Yes, I agree. Christian Bale's debut was extraordinary in here. JP, I mean, sorry, Dino, what are your thoughts?
Well, can you guys hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Sweet. Um, I had seen the movie before when I was a kid. JP said a decade. I think for me it's at least 2 decades since I've seen it. I wasn't sure if it was the same movie, but what I remember so like what got, and maybe because I blocked out all the traumatizing things because I watched this very young. Like I apparently I most of these films I watched when I was extremely young. Um, but I remember I thought they were soccer cleats, not the golf shoes, because they have the black and white like wingtips or whatever they're called. But as a little kid, they reminded me of the soccer cleats we had. So I just thought they were soccer cleats, and he was really excited about it. And I kind of remember him, crawling through the mud and all that, and then him walking, and I guess it's a stadium full of all the chandeliers and all that stuff. So those were kind of some of the scenes that I kind of remembered that were pretty iconic as a kid. But yeah, I definitely remember the cleats, the golf shoes were just very much in my mind as a kid. Yeah, so watching it now, I was like, oh shit, it's Joey Pants, and you got Malkovich, and I guess you have Christian Bale, which I looked later and I was like, huh, that's Christian Bale. Uh,
Ben
so yeah,
Stiller
so,
too.
yeah, and Ben Stiller's on also in it. That's the one that I saw and I was like, is that Ben Stiller? And sure enough, it was. So this time watching it, definitely after all of Steven Spielberg's like works and him getting more into like war films and all that, and I think he's gotten more refined. This is very, I don't want to say romanticized because some, like there were some pretty dark shit that they had in it, but it's definitely um, not to the level of his other films. I don't know if that's just how it's aged, or how much more realism he had in the newer films that I kind of um, enjoyed more. The other thing that I was interesting was how many Asian people were actually in the film. I was, because I guess as a kid, maybe I only saw it once they were in the camp. So I didn't realize how big of a production this was. And
Yeah.
probably my favorite part early on was when the maid slaps Christian Bale in the face. And I was just like, thank you. Because whew. And I am glad that at least they showed, like I am happy that he showed him being a little brat and rich and spoiled and it's just whatever he wants. And then him actually learning and I mean kind of going through it and going through, just you know, the tumble. But yeah, like he should have won an Oscar for the reaction of him getting slapped. Like I saw it in the eyes of just like the what we've been calling white privilege just getting smacked out of him, and
That
and
chancla culture is
yeah,
really
the chancla culture is strong there. So I feel like that's where the movie started for me. The beginning, I mean, it was, but I guess that's what he was trying to show, just what Shanghai was doing. But overall, yeah, it's enjoyable for sure. It's Steven Spielberg. I don't know. I've seen most of his films, so there are very few that didn't hit with me. So yeah.
okay. Interesting. Interesting. Jason, what about you?
Hey now. This movie has been in my peripheral since I was a kid. I used to always see it like in the video store, like when I was a kid. And I used to always see like the poster hanging up in the video store. And so I've been wanting to see this movie for a long time, and it's like on every list that's like big and important, and it just keeps escaping me. But I'm glad tonight this was chosen to talk about because it's one of the ones I've been wanting to watch for a long time. And I cannot tell you, Christian Bale does not let down in this movie. I just want to start it by saying he's so good. He's so very good as like a 12-year-old boy, like really one of the best child performances I think I've ever seen. Like one
Agreed.
of the best ever. And this is the first. And I mean, I don't know what he did between 12 and being an adult, like all those years in between. Like I don't really remember him, but I mean, he just always had the goods. And there's so many great performances in this thing. And that way, it's epic and it's sweeping. And that way, it's so much a Spielberg film. Um, I wonder how come this movie isn't talked about more in Spielberg's filmography. This one isn't really pumped out that much. I mean, I feel like it's a well told story. I just feel like maybe we can't identify with the subject matter so much because I feel like unless you're Asian or like a British white person, maybe you can't identify with like the stronger elements in the story. But I mean, I feel like all the storytelling elements are there as far as like a hero's journey, and characters arc changing. And, just from a technical standpoint, I feel like it's all there. And the movie is just it feels so big. It feels so big with all the extras and the crowd scenes and the airplanes going by and the timing. You know, it's a lot of big production value in this. Just like those guys dropping from what do you call them, parachutes as he's walking through the rice paddies. Like that's probably incredibly expensive to shoot something that simple. So this is like a big production. It's 87. It's 10 years after Jaws.
Mhm.
I don't know. I
With,
feel
with,
like this is an interesting movie with interesting sentiment that was probably happening in the 80s. Uh, and it bleeds into the film in that way. But I gotta say, I like it.
agreed. Valid points. Huge production. I I agree with that point in the sense of where he was being separated from his mother. That whole part where it was perfectly choreographed, you could just see him just depart away from his mother, and that seemed like very struggling to even create or like even manage all those group. Good production. Anyway, sorry.
It makes you feel claustrophobic, that scene, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
You
It's
feel all
totally his fault, though. Drop the toy. Stay with your mom. I was like, come on, kid. And then, am I the only one that was hyperventilating due to like COVID anxiety of like those giant group scenes? And I'm like,
Yes.
I was feeling
Yes, you are the
claustrophobic.
only one.
I agree with you.
that that is such an, I'll admit that, like, going back to Dino's thing, that's such an old Hollywood thing to do. The scene of the child dropping their thing during like a moment of tragedy or like some catastrophe going on, and he was like, "Wait, no, my thing." It's like, "No, you fucking idiot! Don't pick up your Monopoly piece. Just get the fuck out of there." That's
But
not
think of the adventure he had, and it all worked out in the end.
yeah.
white privilege, right?
Steve, what are your initial thoughts?
My initial thoughts is I'm surprised I'm getting my initial thoughts out, because I thought Dino was just gonna steamroll me.
So I was thinking, guys, that
Much like that tank that ran over that car in that scene that we just talked about.
Right? I was like, oh,
so guys, I was just thinking that I have the control to mute Steve at pleasure, and I'll just take advantage of it.
I also have, I can remove Dino. entirely, and I could just do my thing.
And I can come back just like
Uh,
Man, we're on a full-on war
I
right
know.
now.
I'm about to change the password after this. So my initial thoughts was like, oh, look how cute little Batman is out here searching for his parents. The origin story. Uh, no, but man, Christian Bale, what an acting like workshop he gave here. You know, I was watching it, and honestly, I was like, I couldn't even see age. You know what I'm saying? I was like, I don't care how young he was. He was like, he's been a kick ass, dope ass, next level actor. This dude is insane. Like, it's so good. But the movie itself, I'm not gonna lie, the first chunk of the movie was a bit uneasy for me to watch in the sense of it was slow for me, a bit too slow. Once it started to pick up, um, I was really getting into the movie, and especially that part that he's like calling the planes like that's the Cadillac of the planes and stuff like that. Like it just reminded me of like, wow, that stuff was happening way back then, and still up to this day. Not in our part of the world, but in other parts of the world, these things are still happening, like bombings and things like that. And I'm like, man, just imagine that you just living your life and whatever. Not to say that they were living a regular life, because they were clearly like in a camp, uh, but to be just like willing, living your life, and then all of a sudden just bombing everything, doom, doom, doom. It's crazy. It's traumatic, and that's why I could see why in the psychology of the Christian Bale character kid, he was like trying to revive people because it was such a shock, to experience such a drastic change of life of going from like the upper class to like now everybody's dying and like we barely got any food. We're surviving off rice. Um, it's pretty crazy. So overall, movie is great. It was a little slow for me in the beginning, but it's a great watch and first time watching it too. So yeah.
Valid points, y'all. I love it. So let me dig in my initial thoughts. I watched this movie many times. It was something played a lot in the background. Then I adapted to liking it just because of the cinematography and the historical timeline it takes part in. The plot this the plot of this film highlights a part of history we don't normally hear. The storyline is beyond sad. It, however, is adventure. This film is not your ordinary adventure, though. It's an adventure of survival, and it's full of adversity from someone who had a very enriched life, as you guys had mentioned, and a very privileged upbringing. So I did feel kind of like happy when he got slapped too. I'm like, yes, what that little bratty gets. But then I'm like, we're trying to end cancel culture.
Oh my god.
Anyways, so the actors in this film are beyond great. Like Malkovich, that's his name, I think. Basie, I think he's a good actor. And I like him in this film a lot. And the also the doctor, he was also good, trying to like lead him to be a better person without any like role model or whatever. But this is his debut film, and like the character, I feel he had to grow up too quick in this whole story, um and I feel that Latinos can identify themselves in this film because in los ochentas or early 70s, a lot of you know there was invasion of the US or whatever. So um my mom at a certain point in her life was separated from her siblings to join the guerrilla, while the other sibling was in the armed forces, when the other sibling was taken to the armed service. So it's a very relatable film for a lot of adult Latinos that came from the American Civil War. I mean, Salvadoran Civil War. Anyways, um so I would like to like speak on who was your favorite character in, or who was most memorable for you guys, or you know, I really identified a lot with Basie and Christian Bale's character. Survival and trying to like, push through. Anyone?
Can I before we talk about
Sorry.
the character, just because you were mentioning your own kind of family experience and stuff like that. What I noticed this time, what I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if you guys picked it up. Um, at some point, Christian Bale. At some point, Batman is talking with other people, and they're talking about going back to Britain and where they would go, and he's like, "I don't know, I've never been." So, like, he basically was born and grew up in Shanghai, and I just to kind of piggyback on what Naomi was saying of just the families, Latino families, any immigrant family, basically, like kids that are born in other countries that are born and raised with a culture and sometimes language and everything that have never even experienced their like home country and from what their parents are, and I thought that was very interesting, and that to me added so many more levels. And maybe that's also because I relate kind of to that, having parents from two different countries, growing up in Paraguay, then coming to the US. But so I think there's something that might, because of the whole war aspect, which is a huge part of it, that sometimes gets overseen, especially coming from like a white um, colonialist Anglo-Saxon kind of way, if that makes sense, of these kids that grow up in these other countries and then don't know, even they struggle with what what they call home, right?
Hmm.
And my cousin just came back from living and teaching in Shanghai for like 12 years. And he was
Oh,
like, Shanghai is basically just like New York. It's just like this epicenter of international, you know, world, basically. So I don't know if you guys had noticed that the part where the Christian Bale even brings up that he's never been to the UK.
Hmm.
yeah. Yeah, he did mention that. But does anyone else want to dig in with a little bit deeper with what Dino had mentioned? Anybody?
No, I guess just favorite characters.
Okay, so you know, favorite characters. Anyone besides me liking Christian Bale and Basie and the Doctor too?
Who was Basie?
That's Malkovich.
Oh, Malkovich. Yeah, man. There's a lot of good characters and performances. I really like Joey Pantoliano, to be honest with you. Like he stuck out for me like right away. Like, man, this guy's good, and he goes back a ways. I didn't even have my timelines correct with like age and stuff with this guy. That he was a full on grown up when Christian Bale was like a kid. Um, yeah, there's a lot of really good performances in this thing. A lot of like theater actors really, who are just starting to get into movies in the late '80s. Malkovich and Joey Pantoliano. Um, and I guess Spielberg does that. He did that a lot earlier in his career. But yeah, those are the guys that I liked. There's this thing is pretty textured. There's a lot. It's also sort of a coming of age story a little bit too, because he's so young. But there's a lot going on in this thing. There's a lot of different relationships and him learning how relationships change and how his situation dictates, you know, what the relationship is. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And that's like I don't know, and he's just desperately trying to survive like anybody else, and it's heartbreaking at every turn, really. But it's also triumphant, like just around the corner at every point, because it becomes about like survival and humanity for a while. Um, yeah, this movie's really textured, man. There's a lot of themes that can be explored when talking about this thing.
Absolutely. Um, favorite characters? Steve.
Favorite character? I would say honestly, because he turned out to be a surprising hero in this movie, was that Asian boy.
Hmm.
Um, if it wasn't for him, man, Christian Bale's ass would be in the mud, shot. And he turned out to be a hero. And at first, Christian was like very apprehensive to even approach him. He's like, "Hey, no, 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 I don't want to talk to him." And he's like, "Hey, come here. Like I'm trying to help you." So I like those unlikely heroes, especially when they come from someone that you might be afraid of at first. In this case, because of the cultural difference, and that's what happened. So to me, that was my favorite character that I can think of right
Wait a minute. Are you saying the guy that was chasing him in the beginning was the guy that helped him at the end?
No.
I don't think that was the same guy.
They're two different guys, I think.
Yeah, no, those were two different individuals.
No mama, no papa, no whiskey
now.
soda.
I thought it was the same guy. I'm not gonna
Mm.
See, does
Different,
that ruin or
different,
change anything in the movie for you now?
different bone
lie.
structure.
A little bit, but still, he helped him. So the guy that helped him.
Yeah.
And
So
I
the
think
Yeah, but
he's
the guy that helped him can't be too overstated because it's also like, damn, this dude bailed your ass out over and over again, and now, you know, just here he is again bailing you out, and it gets him murked, gets him murdered.
Yeah, and gave you a mango.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. You can see that the growth he has there. Back then, he probably wouldn't have tried to beat up someone older than him. You can see that transformation when he just like throws him down and starts punching the guy that actually killed him. That was the I at this time around when I saw it, I'm like, that's beautiful growth of a character. Like that was my first time ever identifying that, and I thought it was nice, just from the beginning to the end. That growth of like balls.
Yeah,
JP, favorite
I feel that.
character?
Oh man, like as like if it's not Christian Bale, like I really like John Malkovich's performance and character, but again, I'm gonna have to say it was Christian Bale. I mean, almost everyone else in the movie, like they're acting pretty damn well, and they have their own stories, but they're literally secondary characters to our main guy, and he's the one that's like at 12 giving it his fucking all. It's so fucking insane. So it would have to be Christian Bale for me as a favorite character and just favorite performer in this movie. John Malkovich, of course, he has the second most amount of screen time, and he helps uh his Christian Bale's character grow in this film. So of course he's second. And I'm sorry, I was out for a little bit, but I overheard you guys talk about the young kamikaze pilot as well. Like it's so fun. Like he's only there. He's only in the film for a few scenes, and they're really short. But like you can't help but feel, you can't help feel for this guy, and then you kind of understand his story as well. Like as the war starts to take a turn for the worst for their side. Like he's finally given the chance to fly a plane and it doesn't happen. And you see that frustration and that absolute disappointment in himself that he can't do what he wants to do. And, he relates to the kid because, he admires the pilots, he admires the planes. And then to just see him just, ooh, that was
well, it's
heartbreaking.
because he's a kid himself.
Yeah.
They grow up together in a weird symbiotic kind of way.
Yeah. So, like, yeah, like, I guess it would be those three for sure.
Interesting. Michaela.
I mean, I think that like that was one of my favorite storylines as well, was the kamikaze pilot, and like how I guess futile. I don't know. It's like one of those things where like war movies always have to like show the futility of like friendship and human relationships in like the presence of something so big and terrible. You know, like they even kind of reversed the mud scene if you really want to think about it. Like instead of Christian Bale being able to save his friend, he's unable to for whatever reason. But yeah, no, like I think that was one of my favorite relationships, just because it was something so pure in the fact that it's literally just two kids dreaming about airplanes together, and that's the only reason why they even have the kind of relationship they do.
Yeah. Cadillac of the Sky. You just mentioned about ¿cómo lo dices? ¿Cómo se dice? La tragedia when there's tragedies happening around you, or like you're facing these kinds of fears, you do see the humanity or the kinds of relationships the story writer wants to share with you. So I'm not sure if you guys know. Did everyone speak about their favorite character?
I think so.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
No? Wait, no.
Yeah, but I took my time for the other.
Go, please.
I'll just mention the kamikaze kid that saved him. Like, for all these characters that had such small parts, when he at the very end, after the other pilots are shot down and all that, and he gets on the plane and he's so happy, he's gonna serve his country as a kamikaze pilot, and he starts the engine and it won't start, and he just starts crying. I thought that was a great, again, kids in war, and just like, this is what I have to do for my country, and I just failed, even though I was going to my certain death. I thought that was extremely powerful. So I'll put that moment in the film as one of my favorite, with a very strong character that had very, if maybe five at all. So yeah.
Interesting. I was gonna delve into favorite scenes. Michaela had mentioned about how within tragedies you see the other side of humans, and like a different characteristics within other people. And the fuck is that?
What is that? Oh my.
Anyway, so within that, the author was based on his personal experiences and stuff. So with his personal experiences, I felt the most iconic scene for me was the separation of the mom, and him telling the doctor when he's like screaming P-51 Cadillac of the Sky. The scene where he's like he's gone like psychotic at this moment, like, we helped him make this runway, we can also, he was just like losing himself. And that, to me, like, like, not as a writer, but someone that is going to relive their experience and write this, I wonder if it was difficult for him. Anyways, did anyone have a favorite scene where they're like, oh shit, I can't believe this was written, or like, I can't believe this happened, or anyone?
For me, I would have to second the bombing raid on the near the camp, like, because you could tell that the American pilots, like, their goal was to like take down the airfield next to the camp. So I really like that scene, just because like it's so great to still see like practical stuff, and like those are real planes and those are real explosives. There's even a little kind of movie blooper within the scene where they're dropping the bombs, and you see the bombs when they land, they bounce off the ground. So it's like, oh well, it's funny because like, oh, those would have exploded, but like it's great to know, it's like, oh, those are actually real things from real planes dropping on a real set. So it's just like I like the spectacle of that scene, and then it's complemented by like a very like emotional, like a very pivotal and cathartic moment for this character that we've been on this journey with, when he suddenly he realizes like kind of like the actual severity of the situation. Like he's forced to live and adapt to it, but then to actually stop and take a moment to realize what's actually going on, and for him to realize that so much time has passed that he doesn't even remember his life before all this has happened. So that the air raid on the field, that was my favorite scene.
Is Steven?
Um, favorite scene. I have to concur with JP. Um, that scene, even though it gave me like those flashbacks of like the most recent bombing that at least got covered that was happening in the Middle East. At the same time, you can tell that that whole scene back in that day, in order to pull it off, like all that choreography, and not only that, make sure that people are actually safe because it's a movie. We're not trying to kill people for real. So, in order to execute that whole thing, man, that probably just the planning alone of that scene probably took days, if not weeks, in my opinion. So that scene was very impressive to me.
Yeah, very impressive how they moved all those people and making sure no one really got hurt. I was also very impressed by that, looking over it. I'm like, wow, the planes flying over, how they had to camera angles hitting the specific spots. Yeah, it was a lot of planning. Jason, what about you? Favorite scene?
I agree. There's some really big scenes with like a lot of moving pieces, and I'm sure it was a director's nightmare to film some of that stuff. The big crowd scenes where everybody's going one way and people are going another way, and everybody's running like that stuff from the rooftop. To have to coordinate that, you know what I mean? Like the day, like probably the 1 or 2 day shoot it took to coordinate those type of efforts. Ugh, just seems like nightmare fuel. Long days on a movie set trying to get that kind of stuff done. Like everybody was probably beat to death after those kind of shoots.
And just to add to that, not only that, dealing with kids too. It's a
Yep,
whole nother, that's a
yep.
whole
When
nother.
you're dealing with kid actors and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, I'm sure this thing probably cost a bundle by today's standard. Um, I think my favorite scene is also the scene where he's on the rooftop saying, B-52 Cadillac of the sky. Like, I love that so much because it's kind of cathartic as an audience member because he's carrying that plane around the whole time. And he drops the plane, which sort of gets him in this mess. But then that same plane comes as his savior. You know, it's got this real cool full circle effect on it. Um, this thing that you idolize comes in and it's like your angel at the end. That's kind of the cool kid part of the story that makes this thing work in my mind for kids and the hopefulness of being a child. Um, I don't know if this is really a kids movie though, is it? Like you can't really play this for like a 12-year-old. But this isn't rated R, is it?
I
I mean,
don't
No,
depends
really.
depends what kind of parent you're gonna be.
it's PG.
It's PG.
Yeah, this is 1987. Remember?
Yeah,
It is
Man,
apparently,
I
PG-13.
vaguely
it's a
remember
parent watching that.
RoboCop,
they
and I
they
turned out
they they
okay.
they didn't have blood on people. Well, except for when he was resuscitating and it came out of the mouth. But
Yeah.
other than that, any shot it would hit someone, but there wasn't blood. There was maybe blood later on the ground. I noticed that. I thought that was interesting.
Also, this movie is very humorous too. There's a lot of humor in it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean the so as a scene, since you guys are all saying the scene up on the roof during the bombing, and I already mentioned the Japanese kid, I will say, and to kind of connect that is when he's going underneath through the mud, and they're all placing bets on whether or not he's gonna get
Right.
murked.
That
That's a
was
great
a
thing.
fun scene.
And that's kind of that Hollows humor, of just like, what the fuck else are you gonna do in a internment camp? I will add, before I forget, there's also, I can't remember what it's called, but there's a movie about the Japanese internment camps here in the U.S. And I almost would like that to be a side by side, right? So this is
Mhm.
showing, the British and Americans that were in the internment camps in what was in China, but controlled by Japanese, and then the Japanese that were in internment camps here. So that's something to. I'll try and see if I can figure out which one it was. But yeah, just a thought out there for the world.
Very interesting. Um, I like that mud scene too. Especially when you see him walking down to the American dorm room where he just like gained, his badge of honor that makes him like, I'm a man, type of shit. And yeah, you are right. What else can someone do in one of those camps but bet on the life of another person, which is fucking sad. Michaela, what about you?
I think the scene where you see him running around, trying to get the shave wax for Basie, because it really shows how even though they are in these tragic conditions, they still manage to build an entire community that works a certain way, that has certain rules,
Yeah.
and how he's managed, despite him being a troublesome boy, like he really has managed to thrive.
It's also great because, like, in that scene, I just want to add, like, that one montage of a scene, you see how he himself has to act in front of each individual person because he treats them all with respect still, but he has to perform it in a different way. Like, no, I have to be like this with the general. No, I have to be like this with Miss Victor. I have to act kind of like a bully with the kids. And then absolutely like no, I have to be cool, but like still like supporting of John Malkovich.
Man, that kid he gave the marbles to got murked by all the other kids.
Yeah.
One
that kid was so like he looked so sad and frail, like he barely can register. It's like, oh, I got the marbles back. They don't tell him, like, no, he's dead. Sorry.
Rest in peace.
Pretty funny. Anyways, where was I going with this one? Favorite scenes, earning. Okay. So how oblivious was the? I'm sorry, I don't want to say oblivious, but how oblivious was the British community when they were being told by someone else, you guys should leave? Like that, they didn't even get the clue. That was bothersome to me. Did anyone like ever like reflect on that? Like, you
Well,
guys
I think that's just something that humans do. Because I mean, there's so much in like literature, and I mean, even like the way that like COVID happened. Like, think about that. Like, we knew that this was a big deal in like the December, like before 2020 hit. It wasn't until March where it was really bad here in the States. So it's like that's what we as like a species has a tendency towards, is like we like to watch and wait for our moment. But so many times when we're being cautious like that, we actually miss it.
I think it's crazy because I remember saying like the same thing while we watched the film.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably one of the reasons why this story may not be as popular as known. Because what we see in the film is most of these, they're, British, fuck it. They're fat cats taking advantage of the fact that, like Britain owned like Shanghai, and that's who you see in these camps, and that's who you see who Christian Bale related to were all these very well off people, and their arrogance got the best of them. They played politics at the party. They're saying like, should we leave? Should we not leave? And then you have a few folks saying, well, I'm not worried. Like we're protected here, like we're British, whatever. And I felt like the frustration with me is like the way that the story or the film portrayed it, how I received it, is that it's just a bunch of fat cats being arrogant and thinking like they're above and no way can the worst happen to them. Like there's no possible way. And unfortunately, it does because we're all human and shit happens. They didn't have the gift of hindsight. They had the gift of wealth, but they didn't,
I
they didn't
guess
move when they got the chance.
there hadn't been the movie Titanic for them to have seen and realized.
Well, and it's just like you also have to remember that like that's a politic thing too. Is they all are citizens of the British Empire, which was still a thing then.
Right.
So I mean, like think about how like you can't do that to me. I'm an American citizen. Like that's still a mentality that we have today.
They were all wearing their I'd like to speak to your manager, please, pants.
Yeah.
I will say what I found out was that the writer of the book was in the scene, the costume party scene, as a
Really?
just as
Cool.
an extra. I mean, the kid even at the beginning said that he thought that Japanese were going to win because of their planes and just the military equipment.
I thought he had more reasoning. He was like, "Don't you think we're a little bit lucky that we're on this side of the fence or whatever?" And
Well, I mean,
off or something.
They have to show him off as childish, and I mean, I can count on my like. That's how my little brothers talk and be like, "Oh yeah, like if it was a dinosaur versus it's that kind of thing." And that's how we know that. That's how we see the growth too. Because like I also want to point out that during the B-59 thing, that's an American plane. Like the whole time he's fantasizing about Japanese planes. So it's very interesting that that's what kind of causes his brain to like break a little.
Well, it's both, right? It's at that point, from what a lot of people that are in war, depending, it doesn't kind of matter at a certain point what side you're on. It's just whoever just end this, right? Whoever can just finish this. It doesn't matter. Just get me some food, get me some water, get me something. I did notice also the planes. A vast majority of them were model planes. I mean, they were big, but they were all remote control planes. So even the giant Mustangs and all that you could see. I did see also that a lot of the internment camp, I guess, was cut. So a lot of characters that were in the internment camp had way bigger roles. And I guess, and I don't know, I kind of would have wanted to see that because I think they did it was such a good way that they introduced the internment camp with him running and bartering and kind of stealing shit and doing this and that and trading this and that for that and this. And there were all these characters, and even like Ben Stiller, I was like, wait, I thought that was Ben Stiller, but I never really saw him again. Or the ones that knew his parents, right, were kind of also in and out and kind of weird, So there were I definitely felt there were some weird cuts with characters, even Joey Pants, right, like. Him and Malkovich had such a great introduction, especially Malkovich when he first goes to introduce him to Malkovich. He's got the hat on, and then he puts on those aviators, so you don't see his face. And I was even thinking like, I think is that Malkovich? kind of sounds like a young Malkovich. It was like, and then when you finally see him, it was like, man, young Malkovich still looked like old Malkovich. Uh, but yeah, so
Well,
I do.
just to answer the thing about the Ben Stiller thing, what I think it was that he overheard that the kid was trying to meet his parents, and then he left to write the movie and steal the idea. That's what I think happened.
Oh my god, you are such a fucker.
That is no way to treat comedy royalty. Ben Stiller's a good man. I don't even know. I'm gonna shut the fuck up.
Well, I learned that the cinematographer behind this did E.T. and The Color Purple.
last time he worked with Spielberg.
I also learned that the cinematographer died last year of COVID.
No, he actually did 2020, I think. I don't know.
Isn't 2020 last year?
I don't remember. I had too many thoughts.
Well, when this she's talking because when this comes out, it's gonna be 2022.
Oh no, I'm thinking about the
Not future.
Ballard, Jamie Ballard. He died in 2009. Yeah, that's what I was thinking about.
Okay.
Crazy. He did die. Oh, thank you, Aileen. Aileen made some origami.
No,
Oh, let's see, Eileen.
it's a puppet.
Oh, it's a puppet. It pops.
Ah, it's
Very
very
nice.
nice.
I don't have manicured hands. Don't hand model. Not right now.
My hands.
Bye.
Bye. Hi.
Hey.
We're recording. Okay, so final thoughts. There you have it, folks. We absolutely recommend this film. Anyways, this film is phenomenal. It's beyond an ordinary story that you normally don't hear. It has an interesting outlook, adversity all the way from a white privilege standpoint, and it just makes you think a little bit more. There's been encampments everywhere throughout history and stuff like that. So this was an interesting story. I will look into what Dino said. I don't know why, for some reason, I like encampment stories, but this one. Anyways, there's another one where there's women that are in encampment.
It's encampment, not just like campment. It's not like going to camp. Just so you know.
Encampment. Anyways,
Oh, dear God.
My brain's not working right now. Final thoughts, you guys. Steve, let's go with you.
Final thoughts. I still believe this movie is not for kids, but other people here like Dino might differ, and that's okay. But this movie is one of those movies that at first you might be like, man, let me change this movie. But once you get like in it, and you get to that second half, you know what I'm saying, where the action is happening, it gets you in. Um, Christian Bale is acting connoisseur. If you are interested in acting in general, you should watch this little kid go. And to me, it didn't even feel like a little kid. I'm like, that's Christian Bale, the person, just in miniature form.
No.
Man, like he acted like John Malkovich. You know what I'm saying? Like more than him. He killed it. And I also feel like Ben Stiller not only stole Meet the Parents from here, but Tropic Thunder probably too. He was like, you know what, I'm gonna make this movie better. You know,
Different war, bro. Different war.
with me with more lines. You know what I'm saying? And Robert Downey Jr. do blackface. So that's all my final thoughts.
Is that our next movie?
Jason, what are your final thoughts about this film?
Oh man, So my final thoughts about this film is that there's a lot of like running themes in it, and there's so much to dig off of it because it's a well-made film. And I feel like it also documents a time that none of us can truly remember. You know, it just feels like it's just another World War II story, which, you know, there's an endless amount of them. And I love World War II stories. You know, at some point I just started wanting to learn as much because there's when there's a world war, there's so many angles. There's something happening in every part of the globe that's like a very big deal that's associated with the world war. So there's so many different stories that you can tell from so many perspectives, and this is just one that I have never heard before. I've never thought about like the internment of like foreigners who were trying to colonize a part of the world being sucked up into the war. Like who knew? You know, and that's just a really interesting take in a different one. And I've never seen any other story like that. This came out in '87, so it's really fantastic. And even the colonizers, being the colonizers they are, coming into somebody else's coming into someone else's land and calling them ching chongs and shit. You know what I mean? Like the audacity and the arrogance to come into someone else's country and then be racist to them when you're the minority. Like the audacity. But
Well,
this movie has it all, and it
so,
documents that like very, very well. Um, so I think that for me, this is a movie that I absolutely recommend to people. I recommend it to anyone. And I will say there's some real parallel universe vibes going on with Christian Bale because as I'm watching him like go back and forth with Joey Pantoliano or John Malkovich, I'm thinking to myself like, man, this feels like a time machine situation where it's like, what if we're in the future and Christian Bale, we want to send Christian Bale back as a kid to act with John Malkovich, but then it happened in this movie some kind of way because I don't think I know how time works. That Malkovich is a grown man acting with a kid, Christian Bale. Like,
so
and they're both really good.
Today's Christian Bale came first, and then he's been sent back to 1987.
Yeah, to make this movie for us.
Like, I want to see that movie.
I
Me
feel like that's
too.
a thing.
You
I feel like
imagine young Christian Bale having a meltdown on set. Oh, good for you!
yeah, he'd be nuts. He'd be impossible to deal with as a 12-year-old. Like, oh man, we got to deal with this guy again. But yeah, Christian Bale he's just fantastic. I mean, he's doing some really heavy heavy acting in this thing, and not enough can be said about that performance. It's really and it's a beautiful film. You know, all be told, there's a lot of beautiful moments in it. So yeah, highly recommend it. Loved it lots. I don't know, maybe I will see it again one day. Who knows?
Final thoughts. Magic wand goes to bloop. Who's there? Wait, nobody. Who's the
Yeah,
frame?
I'll go.
There's Dino.
I'm glad Jason brought that up of the because I
Oh
mute
my
me.
god.
You
Payback,
can't mute me.
payback for earlier.
I
Oh my god.
did it tell you? Because it told me that I got muted, so I knew I got muted. Anywho, I miss you, Steve. Um, yeah, I'm glad he brought that up. Jason did because how isn't that messed up? These guys colonized and basically forced themselves into like Shanghai and Hong Kong and that whole area, and then you have the Japanese and they infiltrated and took over and then took over, and it's just like there's so many layers just to think about it in a you know um, yeah, historical perspective of that. Like, what? You came into my house, and then someone else came and took you. It's just it's weird to think. I mean, it's not funny, especially, but it's just very bizarre how that kind of shit works. Um, yeah. Final thoughts. I enjoyed it. I think it definitely is not Spielberg's finest. I think even in some of the documentaries, the latest one that came out of him or whatever, they kind of talk about how his work kind of evolved and kind of was. You just kind of see this being polished into like better and better things. And to be like, this is not fully polished is amazing, right? If you think about it in that perspective, like look at everything that came after this and just like this was already there. So I think it's yeah, it was really well done. I would love to see more reactions from the Asian community out of this. That's the only thing. Watching this and then getting ready to come here and talk about it, because I know we all, with our backgrounds, we definitely chime in things that we see that have to do with our culture and our backgrounds and stuff like that. So that's definitely something I will uh, look for to kind of see from the Asian community and not just like Japanese, but the Chinese as well, and see like what they thought about this movie, right? Because they're there, they're there in the surrounding area, and don't have you have the kid, and then you have the one he's not a general, he's whoever is in charge of the in, internment camp. But yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I can't believe that. The other thing, it's like, Steven Spielberg movie. And little Dino, that's under 10 years old, is like, a Steven Spielberg movie, it's gonna be great. And then, and then I watched this, and and now watching it again, I'm just like, oh, I can't believe little Dino was able to sit through that and not be tormented. Final thought. Final thought that Dino is gonna leave you with. Uh, Christian Bale, like he's known in some parts of the world, is wearing a red coat. It's his school coat in the movie at the beginning, and then when he's trying to do the CPR to the Japanese kid at the end, when he gets killed, for a split second, he sees himself as a kid with a red coat. Is there a connection between that and then in Schindler's List and the girl with a red coat? So I'm just going to put that out there for whoever's watching, and maybe it's something that imagery thing that came back later on in his other films.
Also, wouldn't it have been cool if you saw at some point of the movie some Asian kid on the background wearing the genie outfit that Christian Bale had with his dad?
Sinbad.
Or the pilot being Indiana Jones, or R2. No, that's not Steven Spielberg. Fuck, never mind. I lost.
So yeah.
So yeah, you guys, there you have it.
Wait,
Oh wait, no.
not everybody, right? Did
Not
you
have
say
it
that?
all.
You're good. All right, I'll be quick because unless you want to say something. No, okay, I'll be quick. I don't know if I'm gonna be quick.
No, you're not.
No, I'm not. Because the only thing I didn't like about the movie, and we didn't talk about it, so I don't know if it's important to even talk about, was the score. I did not like the music to this film. It sounded very John Williams-y, and it was, but like I've heard sadder tracks on E.T. This score was way too whimsical for this film. There was not enough sad strings in this movie. There was moments of trauma where it sounded like moments of joy. It was like whoever's playing the flute, fire them. Like we don't need flutes when my man Christian is having a fucking anxiety moment and like literal child PSD, PTSD. PD. Plus the English is my first language.
Is it?
So, final thought. Other than the score, great movie. Not his best, but I definitely would recommend it too. Like I feel like the PG does hold pretty well. I mean, there's moments of oh my god that fucking happened, but it's never too gory or too intense. I'm sure a younger audience would probably be fine. But of course, watch it with mom and dad. Watch it with mom and dad. There are better World War II films, but this is one of those films where this subject is not really touched upon at all. So it's a nice it's nice to add to your collection or to like your basic knowledge of like war films. Good. But god damn it, John, you could have made the songs a little sadder.
I thought they were sad enough, man.
I think it has to deal with the music culture in China. Maybe it's something that
Maybe.
mix with something British or American. I don't know. That's probably why. I don't know. I'm faded. So, anyways,
I mean, it's a prime example of a World War II film. I enjoyed it. It's probably not something that's going to be really on my radar again. And it's very interesting to see very Spielberg shots, especially since this is one of his earlier films.
Agreed. Well, there you have it. We did everyone, right? Okay. There you have it, everyone. We recommend Empire of the Sun.
Empire.
So I got a question for you, Steve. Steve, what do you got for us next week?
Hold on. I'll unmute.
Goodbye, dude. I'm kicking you.
Oh, what if it was his movie?
So about my movie next week that I picked, there's so many I could have picked, man. I could have go by actor, by like I could have Christian Bale. He has so many great movies like The Fighter, Vice. I could have gone with Ben Stiller. I have so many great movies like Meet the Parents and Tropic Thunder and Dodgeball and Zoolander. But I decided to go with the director that shares a iconic first name as me. And I chose one of his most recent films, and that is Ready Player One.
I thought it was a Clockwork one. Sorry, I was really excited for the.
Did you guys saw the sequel, Space Jam 2? I saw the sequel to Ready Player One.
I mean, it just came out too. That's a funny thing.
What?
Oh, Ready Player 2 was released earlier this year.
Yeah, I saw that. Have you read that?
It stars Charlie Day as Luigi.
I'll watch that.
All right.
Well then. I think we're all excited to watch.
Hey, if you guys want to see Jaws, then I'll just change it.
No. There should be a rule. There's no such thing as take back scenes.
Nope. We go watch Ready Player One.
Yep.
You could the alien one? No.
What?
What'd you say, Naomi?
Like you couldn't choose the one with the alien.
And by alien, he's got a lot of movies with aliens.
There's one that goes, and then there's one that goes,
What? What's that second one?
It's a tripod that Tom Cruise runs away from with his little legs.
Oh, and then there's another one.
The
Isn't
one
there?
with the trains, and they live in urban suburbia.
What about Super 8? You guys like Super 8?
You know what? We're saying all these movies, right? And they're probably all in the one that we're about to see.
We're gonna do Ready Player One. I think it's,
I would rather do Super 8. I haven't seen that one.
Super 8
Super 8 is not him though.
I think he produced it.
Yeah, he produced.
He produced that and the fucking Transformer movie. Isn't that great to have money?
You guys want to do Super 8?
No take backsies. We're watching Ready Player One.
I just feel like maybe because I thought Super 8 was, I don't know. I don't want
to vote for one. Everybody pick one. Super 8.
No take backsies. I want to do Ready Player One.
My vote is for Super 8.
Are we changing the rules now? Let me look for one that I haven't seen. Why not BFG? I haven't seen his BFG.
No, I don't think anyone has.
What about the clock one?
Yo, I just gave you two choices.
Either way, guys.
Ready Player One.
All right, Dino.
I don't care.
Michaela.
That's a
vote
Super 8.
JP.
I already said we should do take backsies.
So, Player One.
Jason.
Super 8.
So I vote for Super 8. So either Dino or Michaela has to vote to break.
You voted against your first pick.
Michaela already voted for Ready Player One. Yeah. Dino never voted though.
No, Michaela didn't vote. She said she didn't care.
I didn't care
either. Screw it. Fine, we're doing this. But from now on, we have to.
You're the tiebreaker.
I was about to say that. I was about to say Super 8. We're gonna have actual debates next time.
So we're gonna watch Super 8, ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, Super 8 it is. I'm down for that.
Or extracurricular. We can watch both.
A double feature. You're gonna die.
For us to do a double feature would be the length of one of the movies.
What? Oh, yeah.
No,
we could do a compare and contrast.
Watch Ready Player One if you like. But
or you can watch Super 8 while reading Ready Player One.
Super 8 it is. See you guys next week.
For JP and Don Dino, Jason Echoes, Naomi, Michaela that left, and me, Steve. We'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm JP Serno. Thank you for watching Oye Dimelo Network. Please click here for additional videos, and don't forget to subscribe. That's our new theme song.